Welcome to Marvel Champions Podcast, a podcast about Marvel Champions, the card game. I am your host, Scott, and with me as always, my co-host, Ryan.
So, Scott, guess what today is?
What is today?
It is the day we look at the fourth villain of the Next Evolution box.
The movie Sinister? Is that what you're getting at?
Oh yeah, there is a movie called Sinister, isn't there?
Oh, but this is Mister Sinister.
Oh, I heard he's got a sinister intent.
No, it's a sinister motive. He has a sinister motive.
Well, sinister intent is the name of his main scheme.
Oh, I just figured he had another campaign box he was working on.
Sinister motive. I like that.
Sinister motives, yeah.
Well, I wonder how many puns we can throw into this one.
I don't know. There's not too many sinister puns out there. Or maybe it's just sinister that we keep punning everything.
That's true.
But he's a mister, so.
He's a mister.
He's very confident.
I mean, is he that. Does he have like a little spray mister that he's spraying around his little genetic stuff?
He could be a mister. Yeah, I like it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, this is why Marvel has hired us as writers after the writer's strike, of course.
I mean, it doesn't really tell you how he gets his superpowers. Maybe he just missed it.
Maybe he's like a plant. We did have Black Tom Cassidy in the last villain, so maybe he grows. It's just a little planting and misting to make sure everything gets perfectly watered.
What is he, a horticulturalist? Is that what that's called?
Something like that. I'm not a doctor.
I'm not a plant doctor.
I'm not a plant doctor. This whole time, I never knew he was a plant doctor.
Yes. All right.
But enough about plant doctors.
Enough about plant jokes.
Let's talk about the Sinister, Mister Sinister, who as a comic book fan, I am a fan of Mister Sinister. He's one of my more favorite X-Men villains.
Yeah, there was something about Mister Sinister just being so, evil looking, and I always felt like no matter how hard they tried, they just couldn't stop him. He, always got away.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't tell you what his actual powers are, but I just know that he always was tough to beat.
Yeah, I know he's really old. He has Victorian, his real, when he lived, he's Nathaniel Essex, I think is his real name. And I want to say in some comic line, he meets up with Mr. Apocalypse. Apocalypse changes him, and then he goes on a quest for genetic superiority or something.
Yeah, it sounds about right. But my question is, at what point in his life did he go, you know what would be a really cool name? Mister Sinister. Why not Dr. Sinister?
Or Mr. Incredible?
Or Mr. Incredible. Or Doctor Strange, I don't know.
Dr. Sinister. Maybe he didn't go to evil medical school for, 6-7 years.
I mean, I feel like he's someone that did the schooling to be a doctor of some sort. And one thing I've learned about all doctors, and I'm not talking just medical doctors, is once they get that doctor, they're like, yo, you have to call me doctor every time you address me.
They let everybody know that they're a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you do a lot of work to get that title, so you better call me doctor.
You better call me Dr. Sinister.
Doctor to you.
All right. To the cards.
All right, so main side scheme, Sinister Intent. So this one's a little interesting. His first one is just a setup kind of side or main scheme, and then it moves on.
Yeah, 1A tells you to do some stuff, and then you flip to 1B, and then it tells you to do some more stuff.
Yeah.
And I did find it interesting, like when we set up the first time, because in the reveal article they show all 3 of the potential superpowers, like the encounter sets that he comes with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found it really interesting. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. You only choose 2 at random when you play the game.
Yeah. Which it does create some variety as the game as you continue to play them. So there's I guess it's 3. So there's like 4 combinations, 3 combinations, 3 different combinations.
It's a little more than that. It's been a while since I took statistics.
1, 2, 3. It's 3 different combinations.
Sure.
Write us and let us know how we're wrong.
There's multiple combinations.
Yes. But yeah, it just kind of goes through the setup. You choose 2. Well, I guess you choose 1 to actually put on to Sinister, and then one of them you don't play with at all, and the other one's going to come in later on throughout the game.
Yeah, I feel like this is consistent with this box. There's a lot of pacing with these. Like his first half of his game feels very fast, and trying to accelerate as fast as it can to get kind of to this crescendo that he wants to get to.
Yeah, I agree. I liked what you pointed out, that it seems a lot of these villains in this scenario has a lot of pacing manipulation, which I think is a good thing. I like how it feels, instead of just being like, all right, go, 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 go. It's go, 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 stop, or stop, go, 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 and just kind of fluctuate. So I appreciate that in this one as well.
Kind of feels a little bit like Ultron and or Crossbones.
I would say Crossbones for me is the one that comes to mind.
Where there's like very low thresholds, and they feel like they're gonna hit their threshold really quick on the main schemes. And with him, it just kind of makes the game harder. And I think that's, we haven't really talked about his cards, but that's like the big strategy with this one. Is trying to stay in that first main scheme for as long as you can and do as much damage to him as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Because it goes up by 2 threat per player each round, and they only have a threshold of 5. So if you're playing solo, he's pretty much in his base. He's more of a schemer than a thwarter or than an attacker. So just by like his round, he puts 2 on. He schemes for a base of 2, then a boost card. So if he's not confused, he will pretty much hit that threshold on 1 activation, 1 scheme activation.
Yeah, he is one that advance can be pretty rough.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And I think it works. Kind of like Crossbones, it works because it's not that final scheme, and it just makes him harder and progresses that story, which is pretty cool.
Get you closer to that end.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not the end of the world. That if you let 1 pop, it just kind of makes your game a little rough. From that point forward, it gets harder.
Yeah, and then once you get through 2 of the 2 A's/B's, it goes into 3B, which it puts on some brakes because it jumps that threshold to 7 per player, which is still pretty low. I mean, that's Rhino setup, but it switches that gear because that goes up, and then he has a force interrupt where he focuses on Hope Summers. So that's one thing we need to mention is Hope Summers is also in this encounter. Again, same thing from Juggernaut.
Yeah, and now that he's trying to attack her, just remember that she's got that additional loss condition that if she dies, you lose the game.
Yeah. So it's I feel like the pressure's still on, time wise, just because it's just two more threat from the other ones. But then a whole nother side of pressure comes from the hope and him attacking. So I think it really continues that pace, but it just changes it slightly enough that you've got to readjust some things, and so I really liked that.
I did too. I like that a lot.
But
And at that point, he's going to be kind of powered up. He's going to have both superpowers.
yeah,
He's going to be set up like if you're thinking a hero being set up as a villain, he's kind of set up ready to focus on one thing.
Yeah. I will say, because we played a game where we were able to prevent the main ski from popping, that if you kind of like a Ultron, if you can keep him on that first scheme, you can really just handle the scenario. And I think he suffers from that a little bit, that if you are able to just get lucky enough to not get, say, an advance or just maintain thwart, you can really put a hamper on his threat, or threat as in like the threat of his presence, the villain's difficulty.
Yeah, that's the big thing with this one is just keeping that for being on that first main scheme for as long as you can. I think the Justice Van really helps with that if you can throw that out.
Yeah. I will say for the Mister Sinister villain card itself, I really like the Force Response, which is after a status card is placed on Mister Sinister, place one threat on the main scheme. There's a couple reasons why I like it. One, I like that it's not steady or stalwart, so you can continue to utilize your stun and confuse it, but it has a consequence. And I really like that. And the consequence fits the scenario too. So you get the benefits, but there's also a negative. And it feels more, I don't know if organic is the right term, but it just feels better than a steadier stalwart, because you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, where here it feels like there's consequences to those actions.
Right. I agree. And it scales, Stage 1, you only had one threat. Stage 2, it's 2. Stage 3, it's 3. So
Yeah.
I do like that aspect as well. It kind of ramps as he ramps.
Yeah. I would fully support more villains having something like this, because it's fun to stun and confuse. It's kind of it's a really strong thing that heroes can do, but it's nice to not just be like, sorry, no, you can't do that anymore, but rather, yeah, feel free to do that, but this is also going to happen, so just be wise on how you do it.
Right. See, I like that because there are characters that stunning and or confusing is a very big aspect of what they do in their character cards, and those are your stronger cards. And when you remove that ability, you kind of dampen or weaken that hero, and that's a little frustrating.
Yeah. So, especially villains that have like permanent stalwart, that's just annoying.
So speaking of permanent stalwart, it's not connected at all. But we talked about his last main scheme, Sinister Ends. Now he's attacking Hope. How do you feel about scenarios that are dependent on an encounter set like that? Like you can't play this scenario without the Hope Summers encounter set.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. I like it, but I also don't like it. So for example, one thing I actually don't like is Thanos and Loki having to have the Infinity Gauntlet.
I was going to point out the Loki one.
Yeah,
I would love to play Loki more, but I just don't like dealing with the Infinity Gauntlet inside of his scenario.
Yeah. It makes sense for, say, Thanos, because that's his thing.
Yeah.
And it's fun to put the Infinity Gauntlet on other villains. But when it's for Loki, I would love to have played that scenario that didn't involve the Infinity Gauntlet, because I feel like that is not a very common thing for that character to have. I mean, it made sense for the story of the box, but I don't remember Loki ever being like a big Infinity Gauntlet kind of person.
See, and that's where, like, I think some of these later boxes, where some of the scenarios feel a lot more thematical, like, it would have been neat to see maybe he starts with a gauntlet, and as the game progresses, the object is to remove the gauntlet, and it's just kind of out of play, and the game changes in a way where it plays different.
Yeah, that would have been cool. I would agree on that. So, but specifically for Hope Summers, I think having it, at least campaign wise, having it in Juggernaut and then going to the next scenario and having it again, it was kind of like, okay, it just feels like you're reusing rather than just giving us something different. But again, I guess campaign wise, it made sense. But as a standalone scenario, I didn't think it was needed.
And it's required on scenarios 3, 4, and 5, right? I think it is.
Great question. Yes.
It is. I think
yes,
it's required.
it
It's
is for Strife as well.
Yeah, Strife is. It's like integral into his whole thing.
Yeah, I think in that case, I think it would have been better as like a campaign set that just went along with it. The only problem with that is their encounter cards may not play off of it as well. But I don't think his encounter cards really had a hope focused. I don't think Juggernaut really had any like hope focus encounter cards that were specifically him.
He had one that he attacked an ally with the fewest remaining hit points.
Yeah, so that's not hope specific.
Right.
Does Strife have hope specific?
I mean, he has like his whole, spoiler alert, next episode, that side scheme. Like, it's integral to his side scheme progression and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, enough about Hope Summers. Let's get back to the star of the show, Mister Sinister.
Sinister.
Senor Sinister. So with him, we've talked about his two main schemes in the middle there. He gains these superpower encounter sets.
Yes.
And he has one that is flight. And then he has... what's the other one?
Super strength.
Yeah, and then telepathy. So he gains flight, gives him aerial and overkill. And then super strength, what does that give him?
Gives him the brute trait, and he gains steady.
Yeah. See, and I think that steady's interesting to play off of his force response too.
Yeah.
With adding those status cards, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then
sorry, just real quick.
Yep.
I just complained about steady and stalwart. If there are encounter cards that give, or like attachments that give them steady or stalwart, but you can get rid of them, I like that. I think that's fine too.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think we talked about that with Juggernaut. Like, you can get rid of it. It can come back. That's fine. But it's not just permanently always there.
Yeah. Though in this case, if super strength's there, it's permanently there, especially if you get it in the first one.
Sure. And then telepathy gives him psionic and retaliate 1. And it also gives him a +1 scheme. I think super strength gave him +1 attack. Yeah. So did flight.
Yeah. He gets +1 scheme, +1 attack, +1 attack. Yeah. So he gets quite strong, especially if you get telepathy as the first superpower that he gets. That's a 3 scheme. That's rough.
3 scheme and retaliate. That makes for a long game.
Yeah.
It kind of changes the way you play that one a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's what's fun is you can get any 3 of these right off the start. And they're all, each one's not like the worst, but they're not great either. I think for me, the one I would like the most is, well, now that I think about it, I think it might be Flight, might be the one I'd want the most.
Aerial and Overkill.
Yeah, maybe Super Strength, but I like, oh man, this is tough.
I know that's the thing about them is they all have like one huge negative. Yeah.
It's definitely not telepathy because that retaliate stinks, and then that +1 scheme really helps him.
Right. Now, each of them is a 5-card encounter set, and I really like how they play off each other. So a lot of them, like the treacheries, it'll be like, do this. And then if he also has this trait, do this other bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like how like you could see that card early in the game, and it may not be so bad. And you see it later in the game, and he has 2 superpowers. And then it's just like, ooh, that's devastating.
Yep. It shows that progression that we were talking about as the game goes. He's getting stronger.
Right, and not only is his base stuff stronger, his encounter cards get stronger too.
Yep. And each one continues to have stuff. So like Super Strength has attachments with it. I think they all have attachments too. Except for Telepathy has obligations. Which
I got one of those one time.
Yeah, but like Super Strength's got one of its attachments is thrown object. So you attach to the villain, and the villain has range, and then force response. After this villain attacks, discard this card. And it's a +3. So now you've got a. I guess he's attacking for 5 if you're in stage 1 because of the boost of Super Strength, and then thrown object plus a boost. That's rough.
Yeah, that can be.
And then just to show the type of combos that can happen, if he also had a Flight, now he has Overkill.
+1, right?
Yeah, plus another one. So he's doing 6+ Overkill. Like that is tough and fun.
Yeah.
So, I think his normal encounter cards also have some trait depending on which attachment. So like Genetic Mastery is one of his big ones where you do the following based off what traits he has: Aerial, Brute, Psionic. And individually they're not the worst, but together it's brutal.
Yeah, when you're having to do 2 out of 3, it's rough.
Yeah.
Let's see. He comes with a couple of minions. There is Sinister Soldiers. They get +1 scheme and attack for each superpower attached, so they too get a little more difficult or stronger as you go.
Yep.
Throughout the game, which I like. I mean, I feel like this particular scenario really does well with that balance of power creep throughout the game. I mean, and I like that because it keeps it balanced. Because like you as the hero, you're getting stronger, you're doing better as the game progresses, you're getting more set up, and it's natural that it's the villain's kind of keeping that pace up with you.
Yep. Yeah, so it was good to see, and there's a lot in this box where there's that. As the game goes, the villain, it's not just the stage that makes him stronger. The cards themselves are becoming stronger, and I think that's really nice to see. All right, do you have rapid fire questions for me?
Do you remember getting that Sinister disguise in our last game we played of Sinister?
Yeah, stunk.
That one's rough because I feel like it plays. I don't know how other people play, but I typically like to keep my health kind of middle of my life or higher. And this one I feel like is trying to key on that Hope Summers.
Yep, really does.
So this one is a attachment. You attach to Mister Sinister. It says Forced Interrupt. When a player would deal damage to Mister Sinister, that player may spend 2 science resources. If they do not, they deal that damage to the friendly character with the fewest remaining hit points instead. Then you discard it, whether or not you paid for the resources or not. And I think the big thing with that one is it's not like attack, it's deal damage. So any form of damage, you've got to deal with that first time. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think we ended up just making somebody with like
I
a
think
one attack, like an ally attack, and then just give it to Hope.
Yeah, because it was more beneficial for her to take just the 1 damage than to try to navigate this.
Or spend the 2 resources.
Yeah. So just give her the damage, move on, and then we can hit him with 5+ damage and not have to worry about it.
Another card I liked is a side scheme that he has was the teleported away. Mr. Sinister can't take damage, so again, it's not just can't be attacked. He can't take any damage, and that has a forced interrupt that when Mr. Sinister would attack, he schemes instead, which plays off that whole trying to advance his main schemes as fast as he can. And it has a crisis icon.
Yeah, that one's pretty rough.
Yeah, that one is rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Rapid fire. Yep. I'm trying to think of rapid fire questions. I was gonna say I don't know if I heard you say, but which is your favorite superpower of the 3?
Favorite is in like the one I want to see him on, or like favorite is like, I hate playing against that one.
What's the one that you would want to take, because they're in counter sets, take to another villain?
Oh, like which one would I like to see played on another villain?
Mm-hmm.
I think mine is more comical, but I think I would want to take like Flight and add it to a villain that you just wouldn't think should be flying in the sky.
Red Skull?
Oh yeah, somebody like that, like a floating Red Skull, or like a flying absorbing man or something.
Absorbing man.
I'm trying to think of what else. I almost said the Wrecking Crew, but then I realized you don't add in counter sets with them.
Yeah. We should mention he does his recommended encounter set that you use is the Nasty Boys.
So nasty.
They are nasty. So he another thing to deal with his scenario.
Yeah, so he does have a few more minions that like to come out and teamwork with each other.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever answered it, but what's your thought on the Hope Summers thing?
For this one, I feel like she's a much more benefit. Like, I feel like there's decent balance with the Hope Summers one, as opposed to the other example we gave of like the Infinity Gauntlet. Like, you don't get any benefit from the Infinity Gauntlet encounter set. You as the heroes, there's no benefit or perk. But with this one, you at least have Hope Summers. She can do a lot of stuff with no consequential damage. If you got the right hero set up, it's either a bunch more damage she's dealing out, or she can really help with scheme management, which you don't get in some of these other ones.
Yeah.
And like for this one, I feel like it's much less of a factor until you really get to the very end.
Yeah. There's definitely more of a focus on her when you get to that last main scheme, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, because his focus is all about these powers, trying to get that scheme to pop, and then get to that phase where you're fighting a 2-front battle of him just welling on hope and also scheming.
Right. He's trying to get that Dino DNA.
Dino DNA. You gonna put that soundbite in?
Dino DNA. I'll have to find it. Maybe. 5 times.
Dino DNA.
Classic. All right. I don't really have a whole lot additional to say other than what would you rate him in the box?
So that's what I was going to say. For me, I really like I like the pace of this one. Like, it adds a little bit of anxiety and pressure as you're playing, and you're like, oh, please don't advance, don't advance. Or you're like, can you get rid of a couple of threats so I can flip down, and then we'll try not to scheme out, or I can confuse him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really liked how he gained the traits to different things throughout the scenario. They got better. They do different things. One card plays different early game, plays different late game. For me, in the box, I would rate him the number one villain for the box overall.
Wah, wah, wah,
Yeah.
Number one.
Number one. How about you?
I agree. I think he is number one for me. I think he has everything I'm looking for a villain. Not the same as others. The variety of each play with the superpowers, and what they do to each experience at the beginning versus when you get the second one, and those combinations. I liked everything we've talked about. The scaling of the cards as the game goes on, they increase as well, so it makes sense because you're getting stronger. It's a win for me. I think as you brought it up earlier, I think the pacing is what really helps on this one. There's pressure because it's not too often. I mean, certain scenarios it happens, but it's not often that I have pressure during a game. That's not just them like, oh, my health is getting a little low. Most of the time, whatever the scenario's way of trying to apply that pressure, it just doesn't succeed as well. But I think this is one that it does very well. It's like they learned from like Crossbones and all these other ones and applied it to this one, and it, for me, it worked.
And like the other thing with like the pacing is like, it was just the right amount of feeling like you were one card from like being out of control, but at the same time you felt like you were still able to remain a little bit in control.
Yeah. The 5 threshold on the 2 main side scheme, I think was the right call for that balance, especially with his emphasis on being able to try to put threat on the scheme and scaling to the player numbers as well. Except for his stage 1, where if you put a stats card on him, you get 1. Well, I guess that one is the same for all of them, other than like stage 2 you put 2 threat, and then stage 3 you put 3 threat. I guess it's the when revealed it scales.
Yeah, you can when he goes to stage 2 and stage 3, he places scheme on his main, or threat on his main scheme, trying to kind of push him over the edge, get you closer to that end game.
Yeah, he's really trying to push to get to that final stage. So yeah, he's a win for me. He's one that I will continue to revisit.
Yeah,
I think he has a lot to offer.
The other thing, I don't think I pointed it out, but I did like how we were talking about the strategy for him is, try and keep that first scheme as long as you can. I think we were able to do that, where we were able to get him down to stage 2, I think still on the first main scheme. The first played main scheme.
Yeah.
And then, like, once he got there, he pretty much flipped it immediately.
Yeah, because he puts on, for us, the threshold was 10 because, 5 per player. When we flipped him to stage 2, he puts on 4.
Yeah, he puts
on 2. He has fewer than 2.
If you have fewer than 2. So it made it go pretty quick. So, I mean, because on the reverse side, like, it would be really bad if you hadn't done a lot of damage to stage 1 and you're already on the second main scheme. Like, that would be not good.
Yeah. So that's where, like we talked about, it's that balance is you can force him to stay on that first one, which is going to be your goal, but it's tough and honestly requires a little bit of luck, because if he gets an advance, it could be over just like that.
Right. That's the other thing I like about him is I didn't point this out either, but it kind of changes up a little bit of how you play with that pressure. I think that was the other point I wanted to make with the pacing. The pressure is you kind of have to balance. Well, I've got a setup card, right? Like one of my good setup cards, and I have one of my good attack cards, and you have to like make that choice. Do I get set up, toss this attack card, or do I do vice versa? Do I go ahead and get that big attack out and done, trying to get him down, or do I go with that?
Yeah,
setup?
And his health isn't a lower health villain. I mean, it's at 14 on stage 1, 17, then 21. So
Yeah,
he's right in that middle range. So I mean, he's not a cakewalk with his health.
and he's got some cards that heals him too. So he's got a lot of variety. He does a lot. I like that.
Yep. He's a win for sure.
Yep, I would agree. Number 1. Way to go, Mister Sinister.
Mr. Sinister.
All right, well, if Mister Sinister is not number 1 in your box, we'd like to hear about why he's not number 1. And
if he's not, you're wrong. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But you can let us know your thoughts on Mister Sinister. And you can do that by emailing us at marvelchampionspod@gmail.com. We'd be happy to hear from you, talk about it, discuss it. And we can feature you hopefully on one of our Chat with Chump sections.
That's right.
Yep. And until next time, don't be sinister. Or
Don't.
I guess, do be sinister? I don't know.
Go get your doctor? No.
That's right. Go to evil medical school for 7 years to become Dr. Sinister.
Dr. Sinister.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.